Hello, everybody, and welcome to part 19 or 20, or I don't know, some part of my Fire Emblem 6 hard mode chapter guide. Today we're going to be looking at chapter 16X, which is the fourth, I think, guidance chapter, something along those lines. As I said on the previous guidance chapters, all the guidance chapters in this game tend to be they have their little gimmicks and they tend to be kind of tedious. This one's really no exception. It's pretty straightforward, but there are a few things to be on the lookout for. So our crew starts down here. The first thing is this guy, who's a bolting sage. Now, this game, one of the things about Fire Emblem 6 as opposed to 7, and especially 8, is that they really have no problem shoving siege tomes and status stabs just all over maps, especially in the late game, which is what we're getting into. Especially units that you can't range. So you can longbow range this guy. You can also potentially warp or like silence him if you got those stabs. But for the most part, a lot of boltings from here on out are going to have to be kind of like baited out like we did in the previous guidance chapter, unless you do have a plan. There's also two mages here who also have bolting. They, I believe, can reach like somewhere around here. All bolting is 10 range. It doesn't matter how much magic they have. That just depends on the damage. These mages are pretty weak, but bolting's pretty strong, so 25 attack is still nothing to mess with. They don't move, but these can be really useful to sort of bait out, and I'll talk about that when we start the chapter, so you don't have to deal with them when you actually get around here. There's also a silent sage that can be pretty annoying, and then a berserk staff on the boss. So I just mentioned that status stabs are going to become a lot more plentiful. Restore is going to be a lot more important. It's really important to have multiple units that can use Restore in your team, and keep them in range of each other, because these Berserk staffs can really mess with you. We mentioned earlier about the deployment slots, that the lower units in the deployment slots, deployment order I should say, have a higher chance of getting status stabs, so just remember that. The range on this is actually really large too. The boss obviously doesn't move, so you can subtract, 5 to this or whatever, but that still means he's going to be able to range here, which is pretty much all of your units. I actually lost a run once because I'd promoted Hugh to get a healer, but I'd lost all my other healers, including Cecilia, and so my melody my boots melody actually just immediately got berserked and went and killed my Roy, and this was the end of the run, so definitely be careful with who can use Restore. Other than that, there's not too many enemies to deal with. There is a Purge and Physic Bishop here, and one here as well. These can be kind of annoying depending on the side you go up, and also they can range the boss with Physic, which can be a bit annoying, but the boss isn't too tough when you get here, so I don't worry too much about that. Yeah, these snipers don't move. I believe these knights also don't move. That I'm not entirely sure about. But yeah, the rest of the chapter, honestly, there's not a lot going on, so you don't need anyone specific in the preps. Mostly just, make sure our Saul does have Restore. I'm going to make sure, I don't know if I have another Restore staff at the moment. I do, so make sure that we have 2 Restores going into this, which is really important. Barrier can also be useful here. I'll just mention a little bit about the robes that we got in the last chapter. As you can see, I think I said we had like 15, something along those lines. Who you should be giving those to is sort of up to you. My recommendation would be to at least give a couple. I'll probably give 3 to Roy, just to make sure that he has enough HP to survive. Probably give a couple to Elfin. And then, yeah, whatever mage you're using, I think it's really useful to at least give a handful to. Other than that, I think our Clarine has pretty low HP, so I'll give some to her. And I think that's probably about it. Maybe I'll give one to Tate. That's probably not a terrible idea. But yeah, you can kind of divvy these up however you feel is necessary. Mostly it's just the Dancer, whatever sage you're using, your healer, and then Roy, I think, are the most important to be giving to. But yeah, I'm going to finish my preps here. As I said, you don't really need anyone too important, and then we'll start the chapter. Okay, so the last thing to mention just before we start is that we are going to be getting Douglas, the character that we sort of boxed in on the last chapter. He actually comes with a full use Silver Axe and a Silver Lance. Picked one of those up, which is kind of nice. As far as how Douglas is, he's not a particularly good unit. As you can see, 19 strength and 20 defense are really solid, and so is 46 HP. But his speed is such that basically every single thing is going to double him forever, and his resistance is pretty terrible. I don't think Douglas is a terrible chapter, especially if you go Sakai, because basically, like, nomads won't be able to deal any damage to him whatsoever. They'll have short bows. And even if you go Ilya, he can still be a solid unit. He's definitely in that conversation of just unit that, like, if you have extra deployment slots, he's not a bad unit to deploy. But he has bad movement, he's back class, and obviously he's quite slow, so wouldn't recommend deploying him that much, but he can be kind of helpful. Okay, so as I said before, there's a decent amount going on in this chapter. There is this guy with bolting, there's the guy with silence, and then the boss actually missed a 94% on Percival, which is kind of funny. At this stage, you can certainly, as I said, try to bait out Berserker hits with the boss. In fact, Douglas can do that extremely well. But the silence in conjunction with Berserk is a really big reason to bring multiple restore staves and make sure that you have a lot of opportunities for those sorts of things, because if like Clarion or Saul had gotten silence and those were the only units that I had that were capable of restore, that would be a huge deal. So just be aware of that. Basically, as I said, I think the best opportunity or the best strategy, if you can't kill this guy with like a longbow or something, is to just bait it out. One of the things I'll mention, I mentioned these mages, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which can range to here. I actually think I would recommend keeping back 2 units, 1 here and 1 here, or or here or whatever, and potentially a healer to bait out the boltings, because even though you're going to be slightly down on numbers when you get to around here, it's really nice to deal with these guys bolting, so you're not like dealing with both of them as you charge at the boss. It's not like necessary, but I think it can be kind of helpful. So yeah, but other than that, as I said, this chapter is pretty straightforward. Just make sure that you're not like putting anyone in bolting range, they'll die, or you have everyone in the range of Berserk potentially. But as I said, most of the units, I like to go left, you can go right, it doesn't really matter. From here until here are not particularly tough. And as I said, this guy does not move, so keep that in mind. Oh, okay. So one of the things that I totally forgot to mention is the actual gimmick of this chapter, because honestly, it's so like nothing that you might not even notice it's there. So I guess I'll talk about it. Basically, what happens is there are some like arrows of light, I think it's called, that will basically stream down parallel, I guess, or down this way. And if they hit any unit, it deals 10. So no matter like defense or resistance or whatever, it just deals 10. Now, I don't think there's really any rhyme or reason. Basically, what happened was over here, Milady, as you can see, she's missing 10 health. This guy is as well. And then it killed a paladin that attacked her. I don't think there's any rhyme or reason. I don't think there's any way to like know what it's gonna hit. I know it can hit the boss, but I believe every like row or column, I should say column. Every column is fair game except for the boss's column. So just be aware of that. Not that this should be a huge deal, but you could potentially lose somebody to like Roy, for example. I probably should have put him here because that way he couldn't get hit by the boss. But yeah, just be aware that that is the gimmick of this chapter. Okay, so at this stage we finished most of what the chapter has to offer. As I said, Tate and Percival for me, but basically anyone for you could bait out these boltings. Also, just make sure, because my Saul I thought could take a bolting from anyone, but as it turns out, his resistance actually wasn't that good. I've just had Milady kill this guy. As I said, there are Purge Bishops up here with 27 attacks, so a decent amount. He hit Milady actually pretty hard, but we were able to kill him. Past this point, as I said, there's just not a lot to deal with. This guy doesn't move, and then a couple of units because we dealt with the bolting. So, yeah, mostly just make your way to the boss at this stage. Oh, alright, well, I guess that's a good example of... there are enemy bishop spawns. I believe I actually usually wait one more turn, and bishops will usually spawn over other bishops, but this works out. So actually that's a good example of their bishop spawns in this chapter, I guess. Okay, so at this stage we're basically ready to fight the boss. What can be a pretty good idea is getting a unit up into this corner, because that way you don't have to worry about the bishop spawns. As I said, be aware that this guy does have Purge. I don't think... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, if you go over here, he can Purge you, but mostly what he's going to be doing is physicking the boss. So just be aware of that. As I said, the boss isn't too tough. We can see how Milady does. Yeah, she takes a decent hit. But just be aware that this can be a little bit tedious. You can go take this side as well, and if you sit somebody here, you want it to deal with those reinforcements. I don't think it's really necessary, but it depends on how strong your team is. Yeah, Lou actually looks pretty good doing this. So we're going to go ahead and start chipping the boss, and then we should be good to go here. Okay, so I was able to get some pretty nice 60% to hit from Milady, but we had Lancidale to potentially follow up as well. So we're going to go ahead and finish the chapter here. As I said, this chapter is pretty straightforward. You can also see that a lot of our units, like Elfin now has 49 health, Roy has 51. I'm probably going to give more to Clarine. Our Lou has 50 now. So yeah, it can be extremely helpful with the robes. This is why it's as powerful as it is. But yeah, that's the end of this chapter. As I said, not a whole lot going on. Mostly just, but this is actually a really good idea for, or a really good like strategy builder for the rest of the game, which is dealing with tomes and status staves. So restore and good resistance units are going to be extremely important. There's one more thing I want to mention in this video. We're not going to do chapter 17 here. I'll do that next time. But this is the very first Ilia chapter. So basically what's going to happen, at this stage in the game, there's a route split, right? The next, I think it's like 3 chapters and 1 Gaiden chapter. You either go to Sakai or Ilia. Now, most people would recommend Ilia, myself included. I tend to go Sakai mostly just because, I don't know, I really like training Sue and Shin. But Ilia does tend to be a bit easier. So I would recommend coming here. But as far as what we're going to do on the series is, I'm going to do all of the Ilia chapters, and then we'll go back, and the next, like, 4 parts will be all the Sakai chapters. And then we'll keep going. So just be aware, if you do want to see a chapter guide on the Sakai chapters, we will do that eventually, but I'll do the Ilia chapters first. But yeah, just as a general recommendation, maybe I'll make a video at some point talking about the positives and negatives of the route split, but most people recommend Ilia. I would also recommend Ilia. Sakai is not impossible. It's not that much harder, yeah, but Ilia is easier. So yeah, but we're gonna do this for next time. So I hope everyone enjoyed, and I will see you next time.